Mental health-related presenteeism is set to come at a far greater cost to the economy than realized. It's according to Professor Renata Schoeman of Stellenbosch University, who recently spoke during the Corporate Wellness Week. She says being physically present at work but mentally absent and unproductive is estimated to cost 4.2% of GDP. Well, let's take you to Professor Schoeman now. Good evening, Professor Schoeman. Thank you so much for your time. I think it's a feeling that many of us can relate to, right? You're not feeling that great. You're not mentally in the right space, but you don't think it's enough for you to not go to work. So you just try and slog ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we need to distinguish between being distracted by technology or worries or whatever, where presenteeism definitely refers to the mental and emotional consequences of burnout, depression, anxiety, etc. So it's a different concept. And we previously have talked about absenteeism, so people being off work, on sick leave or not arriving for work, where presenteeism means I'm there, but I'm not able to take good decisions. I'm not able to be productive, and I'm not able to actually perform according to what I'm paid for. And what does that cost organizations and our economy?
I mean, are there clear ways to distinguish between the level of presenteeism that should really just allow for somebody to be at home versus, like what you're saying, just the daily stresses of life?
Yeah, I think once again, there's good studies that was done, and we have data that's based on 2016 that we can extrapolate to today's financial terms, where we showed that if people are absent from work, it can cost the employer up to 16,000 Rand per employee. But if you're present at work, so you're being paid to do something, but you cannot work fruitfully and productively, or you can make mistakes. And some of these mistakes can be very dangerous if you work with machinery or equipment, or when you're a long-distance driver, or even if you're a knowledge worker where you can take bad decisions for your organization with financial implications. That can cost an organization up to 96,000 Rand a year, so way more costly. Now, how do we see this? We see this in people that can be long hours at work, but their output is not good. Or we can see people not actually being present. They log on late, or they log off early, or they don't fruitfully contribute in meetings, or they look excessively tired, for example. Now, presenteeism, you can also have presenteeism when you're working from home, because we have a lot of digital meetings or virtual meetings or remote working at this stage, as in the aftermath of the pandemic still. But even if you're then online, you're not productive. So presenteeism, where previously was said at work, it can also be you at home. And the problem is then often people now are sick, but they're working from home and not taking a day's sick leaves. But they should take a day's sick leave. You should be resting. You should be recuperating. And we need to change the organizational culture from this expectation that you just always need to be available, that you should always work. And yes, if you work from home, you can't infect someone, so you can still work online. But you should be recuperating. You should be getting healthy, whether it's physically or mentally, to be able to perform productively.
Professor Schoeman, when we look at the economic environment we find ourselves in, lots of people, of course, especially in a job, really grateful to, one, have that job and trying their best to ensure that they don't do anything to lose out on that job. A conversation like this, quite frankly, sounds like a bit of a luxury because people won't want to do anything that could potentially jeopardize their chances of being in the work market.
Yes, and we're very aware of it. And once again, if you look at the distribution, it's what we call bimodal. So the biggest problem with presenteeism is really in people that is wage earners by day or contract workers, no work, no pay, but then also at the C-suite, the executive suite, where they feel that they can't be absent because who's going to take the decisions. So yes, it sounds a little bit like a luxury, but it shouldn't be a luxury. It should be a given that we have these conversations where people and organizations review the corporate culture and we lead as role model that if I'm not doing well, I'm taking a day off. And where people re-look organizations, their sick leave policies, and even look at mental health days in addition to normal physical health days. But we need a lot of education. We need to have these conversations. And something that I've mentioned in the past also, when we talked about working from home versus working in the office, is where we need to start to relook, how do I measure outcome? Is it about physically logging hours? Or is it, I have a job description and there's certain outcomes and key performance indicators that I need to tick, and that is what I will be evaluated against. But we need these conversations also one-on-one. Often we as employees also assume that our employer won't listen or that our employer won't care. But most people are good people. Most employers are actually prepared to listen if we have the conversation. But we really need to have this to break down the stigma and the barriers to enable people to have mental wealth and mental health at work.
Professor Renata Schoeman, she's with the Stellenbosch University Business School. So there you have it then. Rather than push on going